So just let me share my screen now and get going. Okay. Well, my work, under the banner that I do my work, it's called Sovereign Health, and it centers around helping people to recognize the true sense of self or the true identity, understanding that we are indeed spiritual beings. And it's a process that helps us to be able to unlock our potential and reveal our purpose, things that often elude a lot of us today. And as a result, we don't really get to live the level of life that we would prefer. And so while we're not going to be looking at that, that encompasses workshops and programs that's associated with a book I have written and a second book that I'm now currently writing that supports my work. This evening, we're going to be talking about um, Heal Your Health, Heal Your Life, and it's going to be centered around what I call a pattern that's shaping the future of mind body wellness. And I do believe it's the most profound discovery that has been made to date in supporting optimal well being. And hopefully, you'll get to see why I'm saying it is perhaps the most profound discovery in this arena to date. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's really tapping in to the body's operating system. So, what I want to make clear at the onset is that this is not about something that is an improvement over what currently exists in terms of health, healing, and wellness. This is not an improvement of what we have currently available. This is nothing like what is currently available. It's completely in a new paradigm, and it's actually introducing a brand new era and a brand new paradigm of wellness that has not existed before. But it's very easy to default back to thinking of it as just something new that is an improvement over what exists. But it really is in a very completely different arena all by itself. And so to be able to create the framework, I want us to be mindful, and I believe we all could relate to the fact that um, for millennia, and the whole goal is that we want to break what I call the cycle of fractured living. And indeed, we are all meant to live a life that is fruitful and one that where we can thrive. And I'm sure we all would relate as I work with people across the globe. Most people are not living lives like that today. And for millennia, humanity has been facing recurrent struggles, whether it be disease, stress, relationship breakdowns, financial hardships, addictions, and the general sense of disconnection from self and purpose. We are living in a time where there is more technology and resources available to us that we can all be living well. But based on Gallup polls and other statistics that are available, the majority of people on the planet today, they live stressed, they're striving, they're going through hardships, and there's a lot of suffering. And it's happening at a time when we ought to be doing better. And so the question is, why is it that we are not doing better when things are getting better? And we're going to get to that. So despite the advances in technology and medicine, self-help coaching, psychology, statistics on depression, chronic illness, and stressful living are continually rising. If you were to go online and do your research, you're going to see that it doesn't matter whether it be the religious circles, business arenas, whether it be people who are looking for personal growth and development, people that are reading books, attending seminars, going to conferences, going to the church services. We are engaging processes to try to improve our lives, but yet it is interesting that in every arena, whether it be personal development, spiritual development, marriages and relationships, finances, the statistics are getting worse, even though we are supposedly getting better at it. Something is fundamentally missing in that process. And the depth of that, of course, we cannot get into this evening. Our focus is on how this technology actually helps to support every one of these areas. And so this stressful living, stress and traumas, it rewires our brain to patterns of living that is survival mode. Most people today, statistically, live in what neuroscience calls survival mode. And survival mode impairs our creativity, our emotional stability, and the capacity for us to grow and develop at our best, and for our bodies to heal and repair properly. It manifests as not just chronic health issues, poor decision making, strained relationships, financial struggles, and a perpetual self sabotaging cycle. Now, I deal with this all the time in my work, is how we constantly sabotage ourselves unconsciously. And so, as far as the medical model goes, our approach is we really just address symptoms. We never or how rarely ever look at the causes. And the cause is always influenced by how our brain adapts to the way we think and live, our state of being, our perceptions, our beliefs, our convictions, our mindsets. And so in the medical model, that's rarely even looked at. When it comes to self help and motivation, we attend and we engage in practices to try to improve ourselves in these areas. And it's often uplifting, but rarely does it rewire the actual neurocircuitry in our brain so that we can now think and live and respond to life in a different way. When it comes to therapy and life coaching, and if you have an interest, you can do look at the statistics and you'll see all that I'm saying to you is all verified. These things are valuable, but the progress is slow and the brain often remains locked into its stress loop. And so we've seen it over and over. We can identify it, I'm sure, with ourselves personally. We could attend all of these different workshops and seminars for self help, but they're all really just short lived or they're just about the symptoms. What we experience in life, whether it be relationship issues or financial issues, health issues, whatever it may be, those are just outcomes. Those are symptoms. Those are not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is always internal. But we don't try to work with these issues from the inside out. We work with them from the outside in. And so the result is that many of us return to our habitual patterns of thinking and living after we go through the initial process. And that's because our brain's default wiring pulls us back to where we were. You see, for us to go through transformation, we have to tap in to the operating system that runs, that processes thoughts, processes emotions, processes how we navigate and respond to life. Everything is governed by that whole navigation and experiential process is governed by the mind. And what operates, the operating system of that is the brain, which wires itself to our habits, our thinking, our responses to life, etc. And what's happening is that we're not working at that level. And when we do, we get to see amazing things happen in our lives. And so when it comes to looking at aspects of health, true health is wholeness, and it encompasses every dimension of our life. Sovereign health, the work that I do, it means having complete self governance over your well being. Many of us, we live um, almost on autopilot and we don't live intentionally enough to have that self governance over the way we manage our lives. But sovereign health is when we take that stance physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and financially. So, one of the things that I teach in our workshops is that it doesn't matter where a person is in your health, or in other any other aspect of your life, you can see total recovery And so there are no incurable conditions in life, whether it be sickness and disease or to any other aspect of our life. None of it is incurable. It's not the conditions of life that are incurable. It's people who may be incurable because of either not knowing what to do or not willing to engage the process of change. And so what we need to be aware of is that when one dimension of our life is out of order, it creates ripples throughout the whole. In life, we have been taught, just like in medicine, to treat everything separately. You got a heart problem, you go to a different type of doctor, a kidney problem, a different doctor, bone problem, a different doctor. And we treat them as all separate issues when nothing in the body functions independently. It's all interconnected. When one system is affected, you can bet other systems are going to be affected to whatever degree. So if you think about it as a wheel that has 6 spokes, if one spoke got broken, the wheel begins to wobble. When any area of our life goes out of balance and out of order, every other area is going to start to feel it. And so our whole life is interconnected. And I'm saying that to say that when we can get to the root of it, we're not just improving our physical well-being, but we're improving our mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and even our financial well-being. And so the process of how it works on each area is what we teach in our workshops. And so sovereignty is rooted in awakened identity, because when you say sovereign and you talk about having self-governance and governing over your life, you need to know who you are. You need to have a sense of self that is rooted firmly in truth. And when we know who we are, we will always be able to unlock our potential. When we know who we are, we know what we are capable of. And when I work with people, the vast majority of people I work with, we don't really recognize what our potential is. And most people are still looking for their purpose, their true purpose in life. But once we know who we are and what our potential is, it gives insight to what our purpose is. And so it's a process that could take us down a road of enjoying a more fruitful and a more rewarding life. And so to reign in life, we must have a mindset that's anchored in truth. In the case of this evening, the truth of what? The truth of really who you are and what you're capable of. And so identity, our sense of self, is where the root is, where our throne from where we reign in life is. And mindset is our scepter by which we rule. And together they form the foundation for our sovereignty in being able to govern over our life and enjoy the quality of life and the standard of living that we prefer. And so, looking at mindset, we're going to be centering everything that lends to the operating system and bring us to understanding the value of this. And so, mindset is that mental orientation that acts as the filter through which our perception of reality is shaped. This is very important for us to be aware of, because however we perceive life is going to entirely determine how we respond to life and how life affects us. Everything is based 100% on perception. And so I was saying that to someone recently, and they're saying, I don't know that if that's true. And I asked them to do a simple experiment, which you can do, you don't have to do it, you can just think about it. And I said to them, if you took your tongue and move your saliva around in your mouth like you were trying to move food that was stuck in your gums or so, would anything be wrong with that? Would you see anything, say, uh, unhygienic about that? And he said, no, I use my tongue and I move my saliva around in my mouth, to clean my mouth. That's a normal thing. I said, how about collecting some of that saliva that you just moved in your mouth, spit it into your hands, take a look at it, and then slurp it right back up. He said, oh God, no, no, no. But that's just perception. But it's exactly the saliva that was just in your mouth. Perception made it seem like it was something different. And so we have to be very aware that how we deal with life, how we respond to life, every single thing is based on perception and mindset. It guides how we interpret information and experiences, our choices and decisions, and it governs the habits and responses that set the trajectory for how our lives be. I say to people in our workshops that Wherever your life is now, and however your life is, 100% you determine that. Whether you are aware of it or not, it is exactly based on exactly the mindsets that guided you there. Mindsets form through our cultural conditioning and personal beliefs, emotional experiences, and the habitual patterns and routines that we develop through our life experiences. And so from birth, we are actually being conditioned culturally, socially, and our environment around us. And we're adults now, and and our brains wires itself to these habitual patterns so that today, you and I, we don't have to think about how we go about life. We almost, in fact, most people go about living day to day on autopilot. It's hardly focused, conscious, intentional effort with everything we're doing. And we don't necessarily have to be that way, but many of us live that way. And so if somebody says something to you that you didn't like and it got you upset, it's not like we stop to say, you know what, I'm going to make a conscious decision. I think I'm going to get upset about that. It's just reflexive. You get upset, you get fearful, you get angry. Our brain wires itself to these habitual things, and we see life a particular way and we engage in life a particular way. We end up looking externally at life and saying that life is this, life is that, life is stressful, the people are this, and that's really not the case. Our perception has been formed in a particular way. The good news is that our mindsets are not fixed. We can all change our mindsets. But that renewing of our mind, it requires an inner awareness and a deliberate practice of that begins with self-love and incorporating truth principles. And it must be aligned with identity and purpose. And so that's just laying a kind of a framework of why it is that everyone is struggling so hard, and it's because we're not getting to the root of where the problem is. And so our reign of inner power is really the flow from mind to body as it relates to um, the biggest pandemic on this planet right now, which is sickness and disease. And so our mind is the sovereign architect of our physical and emotional reality. And it's what gives meaning to our experience. When the mind is at peace, the brain functions in harmony, enabling the optimal performance of all biological systems and psychological processes. When our thought patterns and emotional responses are out of sync, it creates a disorder of what psychology calls inner dissonance, and it causing cognitive abilities to become compromised. And this is the case with 90% of the humans on the planet. This inner dissonance arises when there's an inner conflict between who we are and who we think we are. And our journey in life is really closing that gap to where there is no distinction between the two. But this creates an inauthentic state of being that is characterized by what we call stress. We think today, because of how of our perception and how we've been acculturated, that stress is external, even though the all the literature of psychology and mind function tells us that stress originates as an internal psychological component. But we think that the bills, the boss, the traffic, the finances, the people, we think it's everything external and that life is stressful and the world is stressful. And the truth is that none of it is stressful. It just is what it is. Whether it is stressful or not, whether it gets us frustrated, fearful, angry, perturbed in any way, it is 100% just perception. It's not that. And so whether our life is miserable or peaceful is completely determined by what's going on with the operating system and how it has been wired. And so we go to church, we go to the conferences, we read the books, and we're trying to get to a better place so we can enjoy a better quality of life. And it lasts for a while and we default back. When I was in the clinic, over my whole 25 years, I can't tell you the hundreds of people that I would have worked with that they start on a process of trying to improve their health. We normally will wait until a crisis comes, it wakes us up, and they start a process, they start to feel better, they start to overcome. You see them 2, 3 years later, they're back at square one. You know what I'm talking about because we've all done it. We start off on New Year's with New Year's resolutions, and by February, we forget they've gone through the window and life goes on. We keep defaulting back because we have to rewire the operating system of the mind, which is the brain. But this thing called stress, we're told by all the authorities on the planet, and these are just some of it here, between 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic and recurring state of stress. That's the World Health Organization, the American Psychological Association, Mental Health Foundations in the UK. Up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of all human illness and disease. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. That's epigenetics. Chronic stress increases the odds of developing Alzheimer's by 145%. In fact, mental health, you go to the World Health Organization's website, they'll tell you that now mental health is now the number one cause of disability on the planet. Growing up, we didn't hear a whole lot about mental health, but cognitive problems and mental health issues are now overtaking cancer. In fact, it has overtaken the rates of cancer now. And it's all because of this thing we call stress. But we don't understand where this stress is really an internal fracture that we have within ourselves. And it comes out of this identity crisis, a fracture and a dissonance between who we really are and who we think we are based on our conditioning. That's another story. But this identity crisis that leads to dissonance creates this inner conflict that we call stress, and it leads to fractured living. Once we live this way, and I'm going to just give you some examples that we can all relate to, it is impossible to avoid what we call a stressful life. It just varies from one person to the other based on our perceptions, beliefs, etc. But once we can identify with any of these, and myself is included in this, we're all going to be living stress to one degree or the other. Therefore, it is unavoidable to be able to live at your best. So, for example, privately, we experience life one way, but publicly, we pretend it's another. It's projecting self-confidence while still disturbed by what people may be thinking about you. It's a false sense of self. It's judging others for improper behaviors while justifying our own. It's proclaiming to value truth, yet not be honest with ourselves. That's a big deal with a lot of people and others. It's recognizing the value of health, being fully aware of it, but yet willfully engaging in unhealthy habits. It's wanting inner peace, but harboring thoughts of resentment, etc. It is thinking one way, but doing another. It's feeling one way, but saying another. It is when our inner well-being is being defined by outer circumstances. This is the root of what stress is. Once we live fractured like this, once there's this distinction between, and this is happening because this fracture is between who we think we are and who we really are. And most people, this is unconscious. We don't think about this consciously, and this becomes wired into our system. But stress does not arise from external circumstances of life, but from how we interpret and react to them, shaped by an internal framework of mindsets arising out of an unstable sense of self. Identity is what shapes our beliefs, mindsets, and inner narrative from which we reign in life. So you see, when identity is conditioned by this inner conflict, it produces a mindset of dissonance, what we call stress, which inevitably shows up in our well-being, from our physical health to every other aspect. So we need to be aware that no one can live beyond their sense of identity, beyond our sense of self, who we think we are. We're not capable of living beyond that. And so if we think that we are less than, our life is going to reflect that. If we understand who we really are and the potential we have and what we possess and what we're capable of, when that becomes clear and our minds become wired to that, there's nothing that can stop us from enjoying the life that we truly prefer. Life would respond to us when this happens. And I'll tell you how this now translates into illness in our bodies. It happens through the central nervous system, which is how we experience life. Everything that we experience, which is navigated by the mind, we experience it as we walk through life in these bodies through the central nervous system. If there was a switch to switch it off, we could be alive and going through life, but we would have no experience at all. We would be like zombies or walking dead. So the central nervous system, which is the brain and all the network of nerves that run through our body, that is not just how we experience life, but that is what governs all mental and psychological processes in our system. That central nervous system, just to try and simplify it, it extends into what is called the autonomic nervous system, which controls all systems in our bodies. And it has two branches to it. We have right now in our bodies millions of functions taking place. We have trillions of cells, and each cell is performing tens of thousands of functions every single minute. And we don't even know it's happening. We can't even feel it happening. But there's lots of things happening automatically. And it's driven by the autonomic nervous system, which has two branches. The first one is called the sympathetic system. It begins with S and it deals with stress. It begins with S. That's the easy way to remember it. But once this system is activated, which is activated by a stress response, it contributes to every lifestyle disease that we know today. Chronic stress, when it's perpetual and it keeps on going, and we just saw that 60 to 80% of people on this planet live in a chronic state of stress. Our sympathetic nervous system, based on neuroscience, is always in overdrive. Neuroscience says 75% of people in a modern society, the sympathetic nervous system is constantly in overdrive, sometimes even while we're sleeping. But once this system is constantly in overdrive, there's going to be continuous flow of oxidation and systemic inflammation, which is the soil that all disease needs in order to grow in your body. And now this is a system that we need because this is part of our emergency system, our fight and flight. If in case there was a crisis, it helps us and then it settles right back down. But when we live with this system constantly in overdrive, then it creates the whole seed bed for all what we call lifestyle conditions to grow. And this is the root of it right here. And this is consistent with a sense of identity that is driven from the outside in rather than the inside out. The second branch is called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what deals with healing and repair, healing and recovery. This system becomes dominant when there is peace, harmony, coherence, and balance that's happening in the mind. Because the mind, which is now the operating system, is the brain. When the brain is functioning harmoniously because of a peaceful and a harmonious state of mind, it brings this system now to the top. And when the parasympathetic system is dominant, it begins to repair. The body naturally heals and repairs everything that goes on inside. There's a phenomenon in medicine, in the healthcare arena, it's called spontaneous healing, or referred to as spontaneous remission as well. If you're not familiar with that, you can look it up. There are lots of books written about it. There are lots of clinical papers that are published about it. And spontaneous healing is what happens with people who have terminal conditions or incurable conditions, and there's no medical intervention, there's no specific therapy, and the people completely recover from it. And there's a whole pathway of how that happens. But that just to say that the capacity for us to be able to heal and repair, when they do studies with neuroscience concerning spontaneous remission, in every case, it's because the parasympathetic system becomes dominant. And once that becomes dominant, all systems go back into balance. Immune system becomes optimal. The body's ability to heal and repair, which it does naturally of anything, becomes optimal. And so we're supposed to be living in such a state that this is always the system that's running. But the central nervous system is regulated by our state of mind. And our state of mind is measured in brainwave activity. So when we do EEGs, or any type of these brain scans that measures the frequencies of the brain, when the brain waves reflect in a harmony, which are positive vibrations, love, peace, joy, gratitude, it always shifts the central nervous system into parasympathetic dominance, and the body goes into the immune system shoots up. When if a person experiences deep heartfelt gratitude that overwhelms them, the immune system has been shown to shoot up as much as 1,000% in minutes. That's how powerful this thing is. But the opposite is also true. When brainwaves reflect dissonance by fear, worry, anxiety, depression, unworthiness, it sends it in the opposite direction. The sympathetic is dominant, and systems start shutting down, start slowing down, start becoming compromised, and you just have to let it keep running that way long enough, and it starts to set the cycle. And believe me, the balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic is where our sense of identity, our sense of worth, our sense of who we are. And believe me when I tell you that many of us, we just take that for granted. And we just go about life by the wiring of how our brains and our operating system has been wired through cultural conditioning. And now that we're trying to make things better and improve in certain areas, and we're struggling, we're not understanding that the brain, the operating system has to be rewired. And it's rewired through repetition and other practices that we can do. And when people try to engage those practices, they find it difficult to sustain. And there's a reason why that's happening, because it's our state of mind, our state of mind. So when the mind is dominated by conflicting thoughts and turbulent emotions, the body's capacity for self-healing and restoration, it becomes impaired. But when the mind is at peace, the brain functions in harmony, enabling optimal capacity of neural pathways and performance of biological systems. When mindset renewal means reprogramming neural pathways to align with coherence and balance. Transformation of life is rooted in the mind's operating system. We either have to rewire it. So when people say renewing the mind, the process of renewing the mind is the process of rewiring the brain. But because we don't understand how that process works, we may not engage the process effectively or efficiently. But when mindsets are renewed, stress diminishes, parasympathetic nervous system activates, and the body's inherent healing processes is restored. So the solution, what is that? We have to synchronize brain waves to match an orderly state of mind. How do we do that? Because when we do that, it resets the central nervous system to its natural coherence of balance and harmony. And so the key is to have a state of mind that is governed by peace and order. We know that that's a tall order to achieve today. It really requires restoring that inside out flow. It's living by design and not living by default, which is what most of us do. But not that we're intentionally doing it, it's just our brains are wired that way. So we're trying to break habits and keep defaulting back. We're having good intentions to do something, but we keep defaulting back because we're not breaking past that wiring. But if we can get our thoughts to be pure, our emotions to be positive, our speech to always be uplifting, and our actions to align with where they're all one and the same, there's going to be no more inner conflict. There's going to be no more stress. There's only going to be a coherent functioning of the brain. And that restores that mind-body harmony that brings everything optimal in terms of functioning. And that restores that parasympathetic dominance. But when we engage in spiritual practices and prayerfulness and meditation, and we engage in proper metacognitive exercises, and we can be focused and consistent over time, our body responds to these types of things. But people find that difficult to do because it's breaking past mental patterns. So what if there was a way that we can bring our brain waves into harmony and balance? What if there's a way that we can synchronize our brain waves to match a brain, to look like a mind that is in order and in balance? What if there's a way that we can do that while we are engaging the process of inner change? And there's a way that we can do that. You see, because it is going to require practices, spiritual practices, emotional practices, mental practices. We have to be able to engage our life. This is not about just overcoming symptoms in your body. This is more than that. This is when we begin to get this right. Yes, our body is going to function better, it's going to feel better, but our minds are going to start to work better. We're going to start to have a flow of creativity, a vitality about life, where our relationships will begin to improve. Everything in our lives are going to start to improve because it's the same core issue. See, we just can't connect those dots to show you that this evening because we're just focusing on this technology. But this is the technology that helps us to be able to do this. This technology of the super patches, they help to bring our brainwave activity to resemble a mind that is in order. And what happens? It creates that synergy between mind and body, and the body naturally begins to do what it does naturally. This is no medicines, no drugs, no chemicals, no frequencies, no ingredients of any type. This is not introducing anything at all to the body. So what I'm telling you, this is not an improvement over what exists. This works like nothing that exists right now. And we don't catch that right away because our minds are already ingrained and wired that we must take something in order to make the body heal. We don't. The body has a self-healing capacity, and you don't need to take anything to activate it. You just need to bring harmony and balance internally. And what governs the entire functioning of your body is the mind. The mind is master to the body. It's just that our minds are not always where we want them to be. But if there's a way that we can bring it into a state that looks like that balance and harmony is there while we're working on it, in fact, it helps the working on it to be even more accessible. This technology was developed by this gentleman, his name is Jay Dhaliwal, and he's introduced a brand new paradigm of wellness, of drug-free wellness. Imagine being able to get your mind and your body to work more optimally without putting anything into your body, without influencing anything. It's just tapping in to the operating system that's already there. And it's just removing the dissonance. It's removing the resistance. It's removing what's blocking the flow that's naturally there. And what blocks the flow? What do you think blocks the flow? Well, we'll see. Let me show you a 2-minute video where he demonstrates how the technology works. And I'm going to just simplify it for you because people say, how is it possible that it has this type of effect? And there's nothing in it, there's nothing, no ingredients or no substances. How is it doing that? Well, let's just look at the demonstration and that he's going to do, and then I'll explain that to you. He calls it vibrotactile technology. So let's take a look. Don't stick now. Oops. I wonder why it wouldn't play. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. But Jay Dhaliwal does a demonstration where he hooks up this gentleman to EEG and measured his brainwave activity. And you see how the brainwave activity, most of our brainwave activity is very erratic. And brainwaves are a reflection of our state of mind. And so you can see on the chart, there's known in neuroscience that the measure of our brainwave activity is a measurement of or reflection of the state of mind that we're in. And he just applied the patch, and within 10 seconds, the whole mind comes out, the brain comes into an orderly state of functioning. You can request a copy of the video afterwards if you want to see it. It's available. And within 10 seconds or so, it brings the brain and the mind into a real coherent and balanced functioning. What does that mean? When our brain comes into coherent function, it means that all the neural networks in the brain become so much more connected, coordinated, and accessible. But what that means is that all biological systems which are run by the brain, they become more coordinated as well. So the patch is not doing anything for function or for symptoms. It is just bringing the control center that's out of balance and not in harmony. It's just bringing that into harmony. And then the body just naturally does what it will normally do. So to understand how it works, to give you an idea, it is like how a QR code would work. If you look at a QR code, you see there are different patterns of arrangements on it. You don't know what it is, but if you point a camera at it, the camera will take that visual pattern and it will convert the data into a digital signal and it will unlock the information. That's a QR code of my website, but you couldn't know that. But if you point a camera at it, it'll open up my website. In a very similar way, super patches, they have nothing on it except a pattern. There's a pattern that's embedded on the patch. Everything that touches our skin sends a signal to our brain. That's the only way that we know anything is even touching us, is because anything that touches the skin through sensory neurons, it sends a signal to the brain, and the brain interprets what it is that we're being touched. Hot, cold, temperature, texture, things like that. What has been discovered with Nobel Prize research, this is not Super Patch's Nobel Prize research, this goes back into the 1930s and 40s, up into the 2000s. But they've discovered that these specialized ion receptors that are in the skin, that when the pattern touches the skin detects the vibration of that pattern, because everything has a vibration that touches the skin. And it transmits a signal to the brain, and the brain interprets it, and it synchronizes the brain waves in various areas. Each patch that the company has a different pattern that harmonizes a different aspect of your brain function. So for example, if the network in your brain that's responsible for immune function was out of balance, if the brain waves were incoherent, and it was not properly in harmony, your immune system will not be optimally functioning. But if you can bring that area back into harmony, your immune system will upregulate up this optimal function. So Superpatch has discovered, after 15 years of research in neuroscience, that what pattern will send the right signal to bring that area back into its normal harmony. And then what happens is that the immune system now becomes very optimal in its function, and it works. It starts to happen immediately. It starts happening right away. And so after 15 years of research and development, what is called now vibrotactile technology has now become peer-reviewed and published science. It's in the major journals of science journals now, and it's even been now major global symposiums in the medical arena are now inviting the company to present their groundbreaking technology, because it has never been seen before where you can have this kind of impact without introducing anything into the body. It's just simply tapping into the operating system that is dysregulated. What's causing it to be dysregulated? Contrary frequencies. What are those contrary frequencies that's messing up the brain's frequencies? It's called patterns of thinking, negative thought patterns, negative emotional responses. Is how we think and respond to life that is causing that chaotic and incoherent functioning, causing the neural networks to always be out of balance. The result is our bodies are always out of balance at various levels, various degrees. The patch just simply is like a tuning fork. Let's say the immune system needs the key of G to be tuned. Superpatch has found out that this pattern will send that signal in the key of G, bring it back into tune, the immune system now becomes optimal in its function. So the body is what's doing it. not the patches. It's just connecting with the operating system of the body. And so we are able to unlock that potential within just through the power of touch. And just so to recap, this is a wearable, non-invasive neural regulation technology that's designed to influence and optimize brainwave patterns. And by so doing, you're optimizing physiological and psychological function. It delivers specific neural signals to gently guide the brain towards a healthier state. And it taps into the intelligence of the body's operating system, which is the most powerful healing mechanism for the body. It's already built in. It's just not flowing right. It's just out of order. It is just dysregulated. It is being blocked in some way or resisted in some way, and the patch is just removing that static. It's like bringing a radio and bringing the tune right back, right to dial, so that the signal becomes clear and the body just naturally does it. Super patches, they create an environment for rapid neurological alignment. And why is that important? Because it provides now a fertile environment for mindset renewal. That is, so this is not just physiological, this is really transformative that we're talking about. This is why it can enhance well-being across the board. Super patches, they're like updating the operating system of your phone before you load on new apps. So let's say you had apps for your life, mindset training, therapy, lifestyle coaching, all the things that we try that's not taken. By bringing our brains back into balance and harmony, it's like updating the operating system so that now these new apps of lifestyle changes are actually now more accessible. And that whole process of renewing the mind becomes more attainable. So this is very transformative. This is way beyond just feeling better and dealing with symptoms. The company to date has developed 14 different technologies, 14 different patches that deal with different areas, and they all are multifunctional in what they do. There's one for mobility, balance, stability, reduces inflammation, and it's anti-aging. For pain, for athletic performance, for stress and anxiety, for immune function, for sleep, for mental clarity, for energy. This is clean energy, no substances at all. For mood enhancements, for focus, healthy skin, metabolism, habit control, and for masculine enhancements, masculine function. And so these are mind-body solutions that I have become very passionate about because what I've seen, how this has worked with people, how it has helped even myself, my wife, and the people that I work with. In my 25 years of clinical practice, I have not come across anything that is as safe and as effective as these patches. And what I love about them is that a lot of people that I work with, they're already on medication. There is no contraindications, even if you have a medically implanted device like a pacemaker, because there's zero ingredients that actually goes into your body, no side effects. In fact, if you have a toddler 3 years old that has a flu, you could put on the defend patch and you'll see how quickly the child is going to recover. Safe for children, safe for the elderly, and they're effective. They work almost right away. And the good thing about them is that this technology, because the way the company is bringing it to market, it is accessibly priced um, wherever the company wherever they're sold. When you combine the patches together, when you synchronize the power of them together, you're going to get more broad base of efficacy in terms of how it's going to enhance your well-being and start to rewire your brain. Now, here's the magic of these patches. The magic is not that you put it on and you can feel a difference relatively quickly. That's not the magic. People think that, oh my gosh, wow, that's not the magic. This is the magic. When you wear them consistently over time, the brain begins to rewire itself to this new neural balance. But that only happens through consistent use. The signaling has to be happening all the time. But over time of consistent use, so this it has to become like the accessories you wear, or like your underwear. You put it on every day, and as your brain rewires it becomes now more and more sustainable. And you get to see greater and greater effects in your life, not just how your body's feeling, but how your mindset is shifting. You get your sense of well-being begins to change. Your your fluency in decision making, how your emotional resilience becomes more noticeable, how you're managing stress, how you're starting to deal with life. It starts to bring more order to how your brain and your mind is functioning. And so this is way beyond just being physical changes. They're very simple to use. You just peel off the back, you stick it onto your skin, and that's it. All the material is made by medical 3M material. They've been tested. Each patch lasts for 24 hours. So if you're using one for any particular issue, you change it out the following day, 24 hours. Why 24 hours? Because the pattern on the patch begins breaking down and eroding through the heat, the body temperature, the oils in your skin, perspiration, things that is gradually begins to erode the the tactile pattern that's on it, and so you have to change it out every 24 hours. It is in the field. It is medically supported by Superpatch's Scientific Advisory Board. They get it into real world testing and make sure that it's compliant with the efficacy in the various countries that we're in. And so the invitation for you this evening is for you to try it, because this is not just, oh, I have a symptom in my body that I want to improve. Believe me when I tell you that this is life changing, and it's going to help to enhance. You're going to get people, like we've had a couple who argued quite easily with each other, and they've been married for quite a while, but because their arguing was a fairly regular thing, their brain actually wired to that. So it doesn't take much for them to start to argue. And after a few weeks of taking it, they have found that, wait a minute, we don't respond the same way. They're not as quick to do it. That is a relational issue that was enhanced, and they wasn't taking it for that, but that's what they saw. And then in other ways like that. So this is really life changing stuff. There's a Facebook page that you can go to where there are thousands of testimonies of people around the world that's using the patches and seeing the kind of life changing benefits that they're having. But they're tailored by your own body's own intelligence, and we have the proven results. So the invitation is for you to get aligned by looking at your life. You want to engage your processes, but Superpatch becomes a bridge to help us now to be able to access our inner well-being more effectively. So people say the mind is the battleground. Well, if the mind is the battlefield, then Superpatches are the strategic advantage to win not just the battle, but the war in living your best life. Because I'll tell you, people, they want to live better, they want to experience better life, but they're fighting against a neural network that needs to be rewritten. It needs to, they need to renew, not just renew the mind, but the brain has to be rewired because it's the operating system. This is what helps to make that even more accessible. How it becomes accessible easily is you can buy it online through a Superpatch associate. They retail for $60. Of course, I'm talking in US dollars. And $60 for a 4-week supply. They all are one price. They all have a 4-week supply in it. $60, as far as I'm concerned, based on what's out there on the market, is a very reasonable price for what this does, not just to your body, but to your life. You can get it at a wholesale cost if you are part of the Superpatches Blue Ocean business. The wholesale cost is $45 at wholesale. There's a starter pack that we call it in our team the Flex 4, and that $175 includes that $40, which is a one-time membership fee, and it gives you 4 of the different technologies. So think of how low cost that is to get 4 different technologies. You order 4, but you pay for 3. And that's how easy it is to get access to this technology and start your journey of realignment from the inside. The Superpatch business opportunity for entrepreneurs, by becoming a member, not only do you have access to wholesale pricing, but you have the option to participate in a very unique model of business that is globally scalable. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest stresses that people have today that I work with and deal with, which is another area that we work in, is finances. And people, our mindset regarding finances are really, really, really not where it's supposed to be. But we're also not taught how to understand the world of money and finances and having a mindset of how to manage that properly. So this is also an opportunity you can consider. You can speak to Maura and Vernon about that. Um, I do a formal overview of how that works on Monday evenings. That's just for your information. But speak to Maura and Vernon, and they'll be able to tell you more. And so that's really it. I'm going to take any questions if anyone has any questions about anything so far. We'll just whether you want to unmute your mics and ask, or you want to type it into the chat, whichever you're more comfortable with, that's fine.
Can I just say, well, my internet have been given a lot of problems for the afternoon for some reason. But there are other associates within the group who have had people that they have invited. So you are to get back with the person who invited you to the meeting and, to get your further information. But there are other associates as well.
If you wanted to get more information, or if you're inclined to wanting to know more about the science of it, if you go onto any of the associates' website, which you also get, all associates have their own corporate website that they get to brand. On the website, it's not just all the information about the various technologies, but it has all the clinical studies, the scientific references. They're all there. If you happen to want that, have an interest in that type of technical information, that's also available on the websites. The only thing that, there's nothing like experiencing it for yourself. And it just depends on what area you may be interested in, or what it is you might be looking at improving. But I'm going to say this again, and the reason why I'm just reiterating it is because it comes up over and over and over. And that is this. People will get the patches and they, not consciously, unconsciously default to thinking that when I stick this patch on, it is going to work like a medicine. We're not thinking that consciously, but when we put it on, we're expecting it to happen that way. Not that it is going to bring the brain and the control center into harmony in a particular area, and the body, through its own way, its own priority, because the body is what determines the pathway of how it's going to reach there. And that's different for everybody. So 80% of people might see results quickly. Maybe 20% of people might say, oh, it takes a little bit longer. But it's your body that's determining that. It has nothing to do with the patch. You see? So just 2 nights ago, there's this guy I've been speaking with in California. And he's been using the patch is called Rocket. It is for masculine enhancement, to improve masculine function. And after almost 2 months of using it, he said, I don't think I'm going to get this. I'm not going to buy this anymore because it doesn't seem to be working for me. And that same week, he went to his doctor. He has problems with blood pressure and blood sugar. He went to the doctor that week, and the doctor said, what have you been doing? Because this is the first time in years your A1C has dropped so low and your blood pressure is so regulated. He said, really? And he left the doctors not thinking. He said, well, what? I haven't done anything different. And then he remembered, oh, I've been taking this patch all the time. So he called me and he said, I'm going to use it a little bit longer because it seemed to have helped there. And it's only a couple of weeks later that he started to notice a change with his masculine function. Now, there are other people who've used the Rocket patch, and they have said to me on night 1, within a couple of nights, my erectile dysfunction was like, this is great. But look how long it took him. But Here's what it did. It brought the A1C down. When A1C is high and blood pressure is not regulated, it's a circulatory problem in your body. Guess what erection is? A circulatory problem. For whatever reason, his body took that, it got that right first before it did that. Now, can you say that the rocket patch is to help to bring A1C down? No, it's not. It's not designed for that. It is going to help to enhance masculine function. The body's intelligence is what determines it. There are people that put on the Liberty patch, which is for balance, strength, and it changes your balance and strength in seconds. There are people that put it on and say, "Oh, great." And I've had people wear the Liberty patch and they'll say, "Well, it brought my blood sugar down," or "Wow, I got so much more energy." And somebody else has said, "I didn't get that response, but I got a different response." Your body is what's determining. Now, you know what the patches are all going to do, but it also have a lot of auxiliary effects because your body's intelligence is what's driving it, not the patch. So we see Elder, you have your hand raised.
Curtis has a question as well, and on the chat.
Can you use the patch to help manage my weight? There is a patch called Ignite, and Ignite it's for metabolism. It helps to make your metabolism more efficient by helping your internal utilization of energy. Your body become more efficient at that internal utilization of energy. So for some people, it helps them even with energy. Some people more than others, it helps them with adjusting their appetite. Nowhere in it doesn't, it's not for appetite control, but there's some people that say it helps them with that, but it helps to enhance your metabolism. And by so doing, it can help you to burn more. You burn about 25% more calories at rest. If you were just sitting doing nothing or just lying down, with that patch on, you'll burn 25% more calories with it. So it can help in that regard. So I'm just saying it carefully because it's not a weight loss patch. It just enhances metabolic function.
So I have two questions. One is to elaborate a little more on the sovereign health. Means having complete self-control or governance over your well-being, and of course, physical, mental, emotional, such and such and such. Well, I find that song like an oxymoron for me. So could you explain that a little more?
Yeah, it could sound like an oxymoron. We have been, you're opening up something that will take us down a rabbit hole. We have been oriented to perceive reality and life from an external perspective. Our sense of identity is in our physical nature. It's not something we're consciously thinking of. But we find our sense of worth and value in our physicality. That's why people can say things to us that we may not like and it upsets us. That's why if life is going great, we feel great. If people treat us good, we feel great. If life is not going the way we would prefer it to go, our sense of well-being changes because our sense of self is physically governed. We were conditioned that way through our five senses, and it starts from the time when you're a child. In fact, it can often start from inside the womb. But as children growing up, through our five senses is what everything that comes through the five senses is wired into the brain. And we are acculturated to perceive reality. If we can't see, touch, smell, hear, it's not real. But there's another part of us that is more real than physical. In fact, it is what gives life and animation to our physical nature, and that's our spiritual nature, our spiritual well-being, which gets very little attention. We have no conceptual awareness. We have no existential awareness of that. We have intellectual knowledge of it. So you can say to someone, do you believe that you're a spiritual being? And people say, well, yes. And then we accept it to be so because of the source of where the information may have come. And people say, yes, I have a spiritual nature. Yes, there's a spirit in man. Yes, I'm a spiritual being. But we do not know how to conceptualize that as an experiential thing. There are moments it may peek through and come through. But here's where I'm going with this. When the mind becomes wired by that and it becomes oriented by that, it's a completely different thing. There is see if you can capture, I'm going to just tell you a couple of things and see if you can just capture it. Because I understand what you say, it sounds like an oxymoron. Can you perceive, this is hard, what I'm going to say is like trying to, it's like trying to explain to a person that's blind from birth what the rainbow looks like against the backdrop of a blue sky and white clouds. But see if you can perceive this. See if you can capture a glimpse of this. Because this is why it sounds like an oxymoron. When the mind is oriented by our spiritual nature, and I understand I need to go deeper than that for you to capture it. But if it is oriented by our spiritual nature, we would know, and let me say this to you, if you were transmuted into that place right now, you would remember what being upset, angry, frustrated, fearful, you would remember what that is, but you would have no experiential reference as to what it actually feels like. You would know what worry is, but you cannot in any way recall what it actually feels like to worry. It would be
make it for me for dinner tonight, boy.
As though you never
Gotta
experienced.
drink some milk.
That is the distinction of the two, so that it's not about I don't have to try not to worry. You just don't worry. When you look at people, and it doesn't matter their behavior, it doesn't matter their attitude, you would love everyone regardless of who they are or how they behave. You would see them in their perfectness, in their imperfectness. You don't have to say, try to be at peace. You don't know any other reality but that. You cannot perceive anything else outside of that being real except an unshakable peace that overflows into a joy that is so inexpressible that there's just no circumstance that
Using bleach? Oh, I was smelling something like bleach.
There's an inside-out life. When life is defined, when the mind is defined by the qualities of spirit,
My friend.
life is a totally different experience. When it's defined by our physical nature, we cannot even capture.
And I'm meeting,
We have no
start
reference to
trying
what that
something.
is. That's why if you're
Ring
a Christian and you know this, that's why a mind that is governed by the senses, spiritually, you're dead. And that's not a correct terminology because your spirit can never be dead because that's what animates and gives life. But it means your connection to, your awareness of, your influence being by, it's blocked. And where is it blocked? It's blocked right by the heart. You see, if you have time or if you're going through the workshop, there is an understanding of how this entire thing works. But this is completely foreign to the average human being. And we haven't even begin to touch on this, but when life, simply put, when life flows from the inside out, there is no effort to try to be blissful, happy, at peace. completely unmoved by circumstances, regardless, completely unmoved. You don't even have a sense of what it is to be judgmental. It is so foreign that you know what it is intellectually, but you have no experiential reference of what it feels like to judge another person. It's completely gone from you. You cannot live in, they're two distinctly different realities. When you walk or live by spirit, and when you walk and live by the flesh or by your carnal nature. Two, they're as different as day and night. And if you want to experience, it's like saying, I'm going to live in the night and I'm going to be looking for the sunshine to come through. It's nighttime, but I'm looking for the sun. It's not going to happen. It's like saying, I want to get wet, but I don't want to go in the water. It's not going to happen. It's a distinctly different change. So a person who truly lives and walks by spirit, you're talking about a complete renewal of mind. Is it possible? Absolutely. Is it possible? Is it simple? It is simple. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. Not easy at all. What makes it easy is if the more people that are doing it together, the easier it gets. But if you're trying to live this way and people around you are not, and you have to interact with them, it's harder. But can it be done? Of course. But here's where it starts. It starts with you recognizing that there's a nature to you that is different to your physical nature. It's recognizing that I am indeed governed by my physical nature. It's recognizing that I am, and that there's another way. And if I really am sincere, because there's a way we could begin to, and as soon as you begin to touch it, it is so enriching, you just want more of it. And after a while, nothing becomes more important than that. It is so enriching to your soul. Nothing is more important than feeling that set there, and you become more and more and more present, more and more aware of the moment you're in. In fact, when you're in that place, there is no conceptual awareness of a past or a future. You have no conceptual awareness of that. You're just in a flow of grace where you're constantly being guided intuitively, discernment, wisdom. It just flows through you because you're one with the very source of life. How I know this is because I had that experience, you see. I had a time, I've never said this openly online, it's in my books. I had a time where God transmuted me into that dimension for 3 days and 3 nights. I lived in a reality that there are no words that explains it. Not only was it an internal where the world around, but physically, the world around me was so beautiful. When I looked at the trees and the flowers in the sky, the colors were so radiant, it was almost like fairy tale. I can talk to anybody about it because they'll say, what are you smoking? What are you drinking? Because I was literally in a transcendent reality. That happened when I was 19 years old, at a time when I thought God was the most nonsensical thing you could talk about. You can talk to me about God at that time because I thought it was a bunch of nonsense at 19. But one night I asked a question to this God that everybody thought was real, and it took me there. And so I know and I spent the greater part of 45 years figuring out the fact that I experienced that here, we could live that. And that later on, when I became a Christian, I got involved with ministry, when that happened, I discovered the pathway back there. You wouldn't believe where I discovered it. Right in Jesus' teachings. And I'll tell you, there's hardly a church that teaches it. And it's right there in the scriptures. And it teaches about how to get right back to this place where we can live in our divine nature, where we could be partakers of this divine nature. There's a reality within. Jesus called it the kingdom within. And there's a reality and there's a way how back there. There's a way how we work our way back to discovering who we are, who we truly are.
So Dr. David, in light of, you know, taking up the challenge of the question that I asked, or the statement that I made in a question form, it would lead me to a next concern that I would want you to probably talk to. In terms of the patch itself, what it does. It seems to me, based on what you explained, that it's opening a window for your body, which were made in a particular way to sort of function, or at least open the window for that function to begin to take place in a positive sense. So my question would be, if that is so, is it possible that a patch can be developed for you to, which you are already functioning on in the flesh, in the negative, a patch to develop for you to remain that way, or to think negatively? In other words, to control you?
No. 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 You're thinking of it as a frequency. At best. So understand the brain,
Dr. Homer, just give me a minute. There may be some people who may want to leave. If they want to stay and continue listening, it's fine, but I don't want people to feel that they have to stay on beyond this. So we want to thank everybody who have attended. Thank you for your interest, and probably get back to the people who have invited you. Who want to stay along, we'll continue to stay along, but people are free to leave whenever they feel, because the meeting is already ended. But there are people who have concerns, so you can stay on and ask once Dr. Homer is willing to participate.
that's fine. That's fine. To be able to control a person, you have to get hold of their consciousness. Consciousness is not mind. Can you understand that? That consciousness is not mind. There are two different things. Mind is in consciousness. You could be completely mindless. In other words, you could be comatose. You could be in a convalescent home, and you don't know who you are. You can't talk. You have no emotions. You're like, people have to feed you. People have to look after you because your mind is just gone. But you're still alive. You're still conscious. Consciousness is not mind. To control you, you have to tap in to consciousness. The patches don't have anything at all in it except a pattern that your skin reads and sends a little gentle signal that corresponds with a neural network to just bring it into balance. That couldn't overtake anything. And the way how the mind governs the body, and the mind completely governs the body. But also, the body also affects the mind, because if the body is not feeling well, it affects our state of mind as well. So it's a two-way street. You would have to gain control over the mind to control a person. And to get control over their mind, you have to get deeper than a neural network. People may not be aware of this, but consciousness is connected to spirit. When this body no longer exists for whatever reason, we're still aware that we exist. We're just in another dimension of reality. that's another story, but we will still be aware that we exist. That's consciousness. And that's not mind. So I wouldn't, these patches now, I mean, would it come a time somewhere in the future where technology might be able to do that with a human being? Possibly, because the way technology is very possible. But that's not what we have here. So I won't be concerned about. And it's not a device that somebody can tune into and manipulate. And then in any event, if that were the case, after 24 hours, it won't work no more. So I wouldn't be concerned about things like that. And then it's FDA registered and as being safe. And then all the clinical trials are there, which I've been through, most of them, because I did a lot of deep dive on this before I even went into it. But these things are absolutely safe. And let me tell you, and I understand the question, I understand the, ambiguity of it, because it is new. It is, how are you affecting this type of thing? And you're saying there's nothing that's in it. It's not putting anything inside the body. That's a mindset trigger. Do you know, and I speak in this way because this is Maura's group. We are conditioned to think that if our body is not feeling well, we have to take something to improve it. We don't know another way. What do I need to take? What can I use? That's automatic. We don't know that we can just sit down and just think and it can go away, just like that. We won't even believe that that is so, even though that's proven. That's not even disputable anymore. But it's just a condition that we thought. And you look at some of Jesus's most major healings in the Bible. He will always say, "Your faith has made you whole. Your faith has healed you. Your faith has made you well." Interesting. He never said, "I did," God did. He would always say the catalyst, the very catalyst came from you. I remember when he was going through his hometown of Galilee, the scripture says, and he could do no miracles there because of their unbelief. The catalyst is in us. It's not external, it's internal, because we possess the very nature of God. We just don't understand how this works. We may say we are three-dimensional, body, mind, spirit, but the three actually work like one. Is that so? Yes. How? Oh, we don't know how to explain it. It took me the greater part of 45 years to understand how this all works. And what drove me there is because I had a reference. I had that reference to what it's supposed to look like and feel like and be like if that were to happen. And then I found it lined up with the scriptures as well. Now I understand. Do I have it all together? Oh, no, not at all. But certainly we can get far better ahead than where we are. Because I'm living, to whatever degree, I'm living that experience. That's why I talk about it and I teach about it, because I know it's real. And I just say to people, I don't ask, and don't believe what I'm telling you. Test it. When we go through the process, test it. If you're diligent enough, test it. The patches help you to get through, because a lot of people can't even quiet their minds. A lot of people can't even focus on something for 10 seconds before their mind flies somewhere else. We have so little control of our minds. And we don't understand how powerful our minds are to determine the quality of our life. And when we try to get your people, they struggle. But the patches now makes it more accessible and more manageable. People go and sit down and they spend a time in prayer to find that the mind is not all over the place like it usually is. It's calmer. This thing is transformative.
Do we have any other questions?
That's it.
Another topic.
Another topic.
Anybody else want to ask another? Somebody else might have another question.
Close.
Before we close, we had said an hour. Anybody else have any questions?
I don't know what do you need to know about the patches. The only thing you can do is try it and see. You can go and look at the neuroscience references. They're published in medical journals. That you don't get to that level. You don't even get to, especially now that the patches are being used in the pro sport arena, like the NFL and the NBA, and so you don't even get into those arenas unless it's been properly vetted by the authorities to get those level of athletes to use it. And now they're beginning to use it. So we're going to be hearing in the near future about sports personalities in those areas. We'll be talking about super patches in the near future. So unless there are other questions, any comments? Maura, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to your guests. And I trust that if anything comes up afterwards, if anyone has any questions, if there's any particular health concerns that they may be wondering, what patches, anything, just feel free to reach out to me. So let's see here. Curtis is saying, well, I understand that the questions will be asked before getting involved in. Listen, Dr. Homer, there is I can't see what I said. There's a level of belief and faith. As Jesus said to man, at the the beautiful, because of your faith, you're healed. Someone asked me recently, could a person attain and have and see the results like what these patches do without using the patches? Of course, absolutely. Because it's not the patches. It is what already exists. We already possess it. Just like the man at the gate beautiful. We all possess it. It's just that because of the way we think, the way we live, the way we respond to life, that system is disrupted because it's all energetic. And it's measured, we can measure it through brainwave activity, which measures the state of one's mind. And you can chat GPT it, you can Google it, you can see that almost the average person does not have a coherent state of mind. Almost every human being have an erratic state of mind because we're all stressed in one way or the other. And so it's out of order. So what naturally flows from mind to body is always out of order. There's always imbalances. See? So all the patches are doing is helping that to be in order. So then the body just does what it naturally does when things are in order. So that's what I'm saying. The patches tap in to what already exists so that it does its job naturally without giving anything to the body. So if a person knew how to bring their mind and their heart, they call it heart-brain coherence. When you bring yourself into that place, all your systems are regulated, patch or no patch. So yes, we are quite capable because we possess it, but not everybody is able to do that, and it takes a while to learn and to train yourself into these things, which is worth it really, but it takes a while. But yes, a person can get to a point in their life one time where, and by saying that, let me say this, suppose a person had a neural network in their brain that's responsible for some function and it was already optimal. If you put on the patch, it's going to do nothing for you because you can't get it to be any more optimal. It won't do anything because it's already optimal. It's not stimulating anything. So a person who is optimally functioning they have that synergy between mind and body, and that's in perfect harmony, these patches will do nothing for them because it's already in order, right? How many patches come in a box? Each pack has 28 patches, a 4-week supply, and they're all the same price. Yes, it's available in Trinidad and it's available online. Maura and Vernon will tell you exactly how you can get it.
And the other associate.
And the other associates, yes. Thank you. That. And they're I think that the cost of them are really quite good. But remember what I said, the magic really comes in when you use them over time and your brain begins to rewire to that new balance. That is where you really see a lot of change. Goes beyond physical. Yeah. All right, so it seems as though that there's no other questions. And Maura, you can reach out to me if there's any other support. Here's another thing. How many patches? Oh, I saw one already. Okay, great. Thank you.
So thank you everyone who attended, for whoever have invited you. If not Vernon and I, we had other associates, had people join in. It's supposed to be a group effort. So thank you all. And if you have any concerns, just get back with the person who invited you. And what we can answer, we'll ask Dr. Homer. We'll get the answer back to you. So good night and God bless. And think about the super patch. God bless. Have a good night. Bye.